The phone buzzed at exactly 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. The caller ID showed Jessica's name, and my heart immediately jumped into panic mode because my daughter never called this late, unless something was wrong. I fumbled for my reading glasses in the darkness, knocking over the water glass on my nightstand in the process. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, I need a huge favor. No hello, no asking if I was asleep, just straight to the point as always. Jessica's voice carried that familiar tone of barely contained urgency, mixed with the assumption that whatever she needed, I would automatically provide. What's wrong, honey? Are you okay? I sat up in bed, already reaching for the lamp switch, my mind racing through possibilities. Car accident, medical emergency, trouble with her boyfriend Marcus. I'm fine, but I'm in a total crisis situation. My flight to Miami got moved up to 6 a.m. tomorrow instead of the afternoon, and Marcus can't drive me to the airport because he has that presentation at work. You know how important this conference is for my career, right? This could literally make or break my promotion to senior marketing director. I glanced at the digital clock glowing red in the darkness. A 6 a.m. flight meant leaving my house by 4 a.m. to get to the airport an hour early, and the drive was at least 45 minutes each way. I had to be at the medical clinic where I worked as a receptionist by 8:30 a.m., which would be cutting it impossibly close. Sweetie, that's really early. I have to work tomorrow, and you know Dr. Henderson gets upset when any of us are late. The morning schedule is always packed with patients. I tried to keep my voice gentle while explaining the logistics, hoping she might consider other options. Mom, please, this is literally my dream job we're talking about. The Miami conference has executives from the New York office, and if I can network properly, this promotion is basically guaranteed. I'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe I can even help you out financially once I get this raise. The financial comment stung a little, though I'm sure she didn't mean it that way. Jessica had been struggling with student loans and the high cost of living in her downtown apartment, but the suggestion that I needed her financial help felt oddly patronizing. I had been supporting myself just fine since her father walked out 12 years ago. Thank you very much. But this was my daughter, and she was reaching for something important. I had always been the parent who said yes, who made sacrifices, who figured out how to make things work no matter how inconvenient. It's what mothers do. Okay, honey, I'll pick you up at 4 a.m. Text me your address again just to be sure I have it right. You're the absolute best, Mom. I knew I could count on you. I'll see you in the morning. Love you. The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me staring at the phone in the blue glow of its screen. I set my alarm for 3:15 a.m. and tried to fall back asleep, but my mind kept cycling through the logistics of the morning. I'd have to skip my usual coffee and breakfast routine, hope traffic wasn't terrible, and then rush straight from the airport, to work without time to decompress or prepare for the day. 3 hours and 28 minutes later, my alarm shrieked me back to consciousness. I stumbled through my morning routine in the dark, pulling on yesterday's clothes and grabbing a granola bar for the road. The November air was bitter cold when I stepped outside, and my 12-year-old Honda Civic protested loudly when I turned the key in the ignition. Jessica's apartment complex was one of those trendy converted warehouse buildings in the Arts District, the kind of place that charged premium rent for exposed brick walls and industrial fixtures. I had helped her move in 2 years ago, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the building's single elevator was perpetually broken. The monthly rent was more than my mortgage payment, but Jessica insisted she needed to live somewhere that reflected her professional image. I pulled up to the front entrance at exactly 4 a.m. and texted her that I was there. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, at 4:18, she emerged from the building dragging 2 oversized suitcases and what appeared to be a garment bag. Sorry. I couldn't decide between the navy blue or the charcoal gray suit for my presentation, so I'm bringing both. And then I realized I needed my backup laptop charger and my good heels. She was talking rapidly while struggling to load her luggage into my small trunk, her words coming out in clouds of vapor in the cold morning air. Jessica, we're already running behind schedule. I popped the trunk and got out to help her with the heavier suitcase. How long is this conference? You've packed enough for a month. It's only 3 days, but I need options. You never know who you're going to meet or what kind of opportunities might come up. Image is everything in marketing, Mom. You have to dress for the job you want, not the job you have. I bit back my response about how the job I had was the one that had paid for her college tuition and supported her through 2 unpaid internships. But this wasn't the time for that conversation. We needed to focus on getting her to the airport. The drive started off smoothly enough. Jessica chattered about the conference sessions she was most excited about, the networking events she had planned, and the potential connections she hoped to make with the executives from headquarters. Listened and made appropriate encouraging noises while navigating the empty early morning streets. Oh, and Mom, I meant to tell you earlier, but I completely forgot. When you drop me off, you're going to need to park in the garage and walk me in with my luggage. The curbside check-in is closed for renovations, and there's no way I can manage both suitcases plus my carry-on bag by myself. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. We were making good time, but parking and walking into the terminal would add at least 30 minutes to the trip. Honey, I'm really cutting it close with work as it is. Can't you use one of those luggage carts? Those things cost like $5, and besides, they're really hard to maneuver. Please, Mom, I'm already stressed enough about this presentation without having to worry about dropping my laptop bag in the parking garage. The airport parking garage was a concrete maze that smelled like exhaust fumes and frustration. We circled the first level twice before finding a spot that was reasonably close to the terminal entrance. I watched Jessica check her reflection in the side mirror, applying a fresh coat of lipstick and smoothing her already perfect hair. Okay, let's do this, she said, stepping out of the car with the confidence of someone who had never doubted that the world would bend to accommodate her needs. I pulled her luggage from the trunk while she gathered her purse and laptop bag. The heavier suitcase had a wobbly wheel that made it veer to the left with every step, and I found myself fighting to keep it rolling in a straight line across the uneven concrete. Inside the terminal, the morning rush was just beginning. Business. Travelers moved with purposeful strides toward their gates, while families with young children struggled with car seats and diaper bags. The departure board showed Jessica's flight was on time, departing from gate B23. We need to get to security, Jessica said, consulting her phone. I want to get through early so I can grab coffee and review my presentation notes one more time. We made our way to the check-in counter, where a tired-looking airline employee helped Jessica print her boarding pass and check her larger suitcase. The process took longer than expected because Jessica's bag was 3 pounds over the weight limit, requiring her to open it up and redistribute items between her carry-on and checked luggage right there at the counter. Ma'am, you can't accompany your daughter past this point without a boarding pass of your own, the security officer informed me when we reached the TSA checkpoint. You'll need to say your goodbyes here. Jessica turned to me with a smile that was equal parts grateful and distracted. Thanks so much for this, Mom. You're seriously the best. I'll call you when I land in Miami, okay? She leaned in for a quick hug, already mentally transitioning into business mode. I could see her eyes scanning the security line, calculating how long it would take to get through, checking her watch to ensure she'd have enough time for that coffee she wanted. Have a great conference, sweetheart. I'm proud of you for going after this opportunity. I know you are. This is going to change everything for me. I can feel it. She was already moving toward the security line, pulling her laptop out of its bag in preparation for the screening process. I watched her until she disappeared around the corner, then made my way back through the terminal toward the parking garage. The whole drop-off process had taken 47 minutes, and now I was facing the morning rush hour traffic on my drive back into the city. My phone rang just as I was pulling out of the parking garage. Dr. Henderson's name appeared on the screen, and my stomach dropped. "Linda, where are you? Mrs. Patterson has been waiting for 15 minutes, and the entire morning schedule is backing up." "I'm so sorry, Dr. Henderson. I had a family emergency, and I'm driving back from the airport now. I should be there in about 30 minutes, depending on traffic." 30 minutes? Linda, you know how I feel about punctuality. Our patients expect professional service, and when staff members are late, it reflects poorly on the entire practice. I understand, and I'm truly sorry. This was completely unavoidable, but it won't happen again. There was a long pause before he responded. "We'll discuss this when you get here. In the meantime, I'll have to handle the front desk myself, which means I'm falling behind on my own patient appointments." The guilt settled in my chest like a heavy stone as I navigated the increasingly congested morning traffic. Dr. Henderson was a decent boss overall, but he ran his practice with military precision and had very little patience for disruptions to his carefully planned schedule. I had been working for him for 8 years and had never been late before, but I doubted that track record would count for much in this moment. When I finally arrived at the clinic, the waiting room was packed with irritated patients, and Dr. Henderson's expression made it clear that my day was going to be even longer and more stressful than anticipated. I spent my lunch break making up the work I had missed that morning and stayed an extra hour after closing to ensure everything was properly organized for the next day. Jessica called that evening while I was heating up a frozen dinner and trying to decompress from one of the most stressful days I'd had in months. "Mom, I'm in Miami and it's absolutely gorgeous here. The hotel is incredible, and I already met 2 executives from the New York office at the welcome reception. I think this is going to be even better than I hoped." "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so glad it's going well. How was your day? Did you make it to work on time?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I hesitated, not wanting to dampen her excitement with my own problems. "It was a little tight, but everything worked out fine." "Good. I was worried about that. But anyway, I have to run because there's a networking dinner tonight and I want to change into something more formal. I'll call you tomorrow and tell you all about the conference sessions." After she hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment eating reheated pasta and thinking about the morning's events. Jessica's excitement was genuine, and I was happy that things were going well for her. But there was something about the way she had asked about my day that felt perfunctory, like she was checking a box rather than genuinely caring about the consequences of her request. The next morning at work, Dr. Henderson called me into his office during my break. "Linda, I want to discuss what happened yesterday. In 8 years, you've been one of my most reliable employees, so yesterday's lateness was particularly surprising." "I know, Dr. Henderson, and I sincerely apologize. My daughter had a last-minute flight change for a business conference, and she needed a ride to the airport." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with the same analytical expression he used when reviewing patient charts. "I understand that family emergencies happen, but in the future, I need you to consider whether these requests are truly emergencies or simply poor planning on someone else's part." The comment stung because it was uncomfortably close to my own private thoughts about the situation. "You're absolutely right. I should have suggested alternative transportation options. I'm not trying to be harsh, Linda, but you're 53 years old, and your daughter is what, 26? At some point, adult children need to handle their own logistics without putting their parents' jobs at risk." I nodded and assured him it wouldn't happen again, but his words echoed in my head for the rest of the day. Was I enabling Jessica's tendency to treat me like a personal assistant? Had I trained her to expect that I would always drop everything to accommodate her needs, regardless of the cost to myself? Jessica called that evening full of excitement about the day's events. She had attended 3 different sessions, exchanged business cards with at least a dozen potential contacts, and been personally invited to a VIP reception by one of the senior executives. This is literally changing my entire career trajectory. Mom, I can't thank you enough for making this possible. If you hadn't driven me to the airport, I would have missed this whole opportunity. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. It sounds like you're making the most of every opportunity. I am. And guess what? The executive I mentioned, Patricia Williams, she's the regional director for the Southeast, and she specifically mentioned that they're looking to promote young talent into leadership positions. She wants to set up a follow-up meeting when I get back home. Jessica's success was exactly what I had hoped for when I agreed to that early morning airport run. Seeing her thrive professionally made all the stress and inconvenience feel worthwhile. This was what parenting was about, sacrificing your own comfort to help your children achieve their dreams. But as the weeks passed, I began to notice a pattern that made me uncomfortable. Jessica's phone calls became less frequent, and when she did call, the conversations were increasingly one-sided. She would update me on her work situation, her social plans, her apartment renovations, but rarely asked about my life in any meaningful way. When she did ask how I was doing, it felt like she was going through the motions rather than genuinely wanting to know. If I mentioned that work had been stressful, or that I was dealing with a minor health issue, she would make appropriate sympathetic noises before quickly steering the conversation back to her own concerns. The follow-up meeting with Patricia Williams had gone exceptionally well, and Jessica was now being considered for a promotion that would move her to the company's Atlanta office. The position came with a significant salary increase and the kind of career advancement opportunities she had been working toward since college. The only thing is, if I get this promotion, I'll need to relocate by the end of January. That's going to be a huge undertaking, especially since I'll be starting the new job immediately and won't have time to handle all the moving logistics myself. I could hear the expectation in her voice before she even made the direct request. Mom, I was wondering if you might be able to help me with the move. I know it's a lot to ask, but you're so good at organizing things, and I trust you to handle my stuff carefully. The moving process she described would require taking at least a week off work to pack her apartment, coordinate with movers, clean the old place, and help her get settled in Atlanta. A week of unpaid leave that I couldn't really afford, plus the gas money for multiple trips between cities. That's a big promotion, Jessica. I'm so excited for you. Let me check my schedule and see what I can arrange with Dr. Henderson. You're amazing, Mom. I knew I could count on you. This promotion is going to change everything for me. The salary increase alone will let me start building some real savings for the first time in my adult life. After we hung up, I sat with my calendar and tried to figure out how to make Jessica's timeline work with my own responsibilities. Dr. Henderson had been understanding about my occasional personal needs in the past, but asking for a full week off with only a month's notice felt like pushing the boundaries of his patience. But this was Jessica's career we were talking about. This was the opportunity she had been working toward for years, and if I could help make it happen, didn't I have an obligation as her mother to find a way? The conversation with Dr. Henderson went better than I had expected. He was willing to approve the unpaid leave as long as I could train the temporary receptionist who would cover for me and ensure that all the patient files were properly organized before I left. Just remember, Linda, this is a significant disruption to our normal operations. I'm approving this request because you've been a valuable employee, but I can't make this kind of accommodation a regular occurrence. I assured him that this was a one-time situation and spent the next 3 weeks preparing for my absence. I created detailed instruction manuals for every aspect of the job, organized the filing system, and even prepared sample scripts for handling common patient questions. Jessica's excitement about the move was infectious, and despite the stress of arranging everything, I found myself looking forward to helping her start this new chapter of her life. We had always been close, and this felt like an opportunity to spend quality time together while doing something meaningful for her future. The packing process was more intensive than I had anticipated. Jessica's apartment was filled with clothes, books, kitchen equipment, and furniture that she insisted all needed to make the trip to Atlanta. She had developed expensive tastes over the years, and many of her possessions were high-quality items that required careful packing. "I know it seems like a lot," she said as we wrapped her collection of wine glasses in bubble wrap. "But I've worked really hard to build a lifestyle that reflects my professional goals. Everything here represents an investment in my image and my future." We worked for 3 days straight, packing boxes and coordinating with the moving company. Jessica handled the decision-making about what to keep, donate, or throw away, while I did most of the physical labor of wrapping and boxing items. My back ached from bending over boxes, and my hands were raw from packing tape and cardboard, but Jessica's enthusiasm kept me motivated. The drive to Atlanta was pleasant, with Jessica chattering excitedly about her new job responsibilities and the apartment she had chosen in a trendy neighborhood called Virginia Highland. She had found the place through a relocation service provided by her company, and from her description, it sounded like a significant upgrade from her previous living situation. The best part is that it's walking distance from some of the best restaurants and bars in the city. I'll be able to network with other young professionals and really establish myself in the Atlanta scene. The new apartment was indeed impressive. A modern 2-bedroom unit with hardwood floors, granite countertops, and large windows that filled the space with natural light. The rent was substantially higher than what she had been paying before, but with her salary increase, she assured me it was completely manageable. We spent 2 more days unpacking and organizing her belongings, transforming the empty apartment into a space that looked like it could be featured in a lifestyle magazine. Jessica had developed a good eye for interior design, and everything from her furniture placement to her color choices reflected sophistication and style. On my last evening in Atlanta, Jessica took me to dinner at an upscale restaurant in her new neighborhood. The menu was filled with items I didn't recognize, and the prices were higher than what I typically spent on groceries in a week. But Jessica insisted on treating me as a thank you for all my help. "Mom, I honestly don't know how I would have done this without you. Moving is so stressful, and knowing that you were handling all the details allowed me to focus on preparing for my new job. I'm just happy I could help, sweetheart. This is an incredible opportunity for you, and I'm so proud of how hard you've worked to get here. I know you are. And I want you to know that I don't take your support for granted. Once I get settled in this new position and start building some financial security, I want to be able to help you out too. Maybe you could even consider retiring a few years early and enjoy some of the things you've always wanted to do." The suggestion was sweet, but it felt somewhat disconnected from the reality of my financial situation. I was 53 years old with minimal retirement savings and a job that provided adequate but not generous health insurance. Early retirement wasn't something I had the luxury of considering, regardless of any potential future help from Jessica. But I appreciated the sentiment behind her words, and it felt good to know that she recognized the sacrifices I had made to support her career advancement. The drive back home was longer and more tiring than the trip to Atlanta had been. I was traveling alone now, and the 7-hour journey gave me plenty of time to think about the week's events. I felt satisfied about helping Jessica get established in her new life, but I was also exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. When I returned to work the following Monday, Dr. Henderson asked how the move had gone and whether Jessica was settling in well to her new job. I updated him on her successful transition and thanked him again for being flexible about my time off. "I'm glad it worked out well for her," he said. "Just remember that this kind of arrangement isn't something I can accommodate regularly. The practice depends on consistency, and our patients need to know they can rely on our schedule." I assured him that I understood and that there wouldn't be any similar requests in the future. Jessica was now established in her career and her new city, and she wouldn't need this level of hands-on support going forward. Over the next few months, Jessica and I settled into a new routine of phone calls and text messages. She was thriving in her new position and had quickly established herself as a valuable team member. Her supervisor had already mentioned the possibility of additional advancement opportunities, and Jessica was optimistic about her long-term prospects with the company. But as time passed, I began to notice that our conversations were becoming increasingly superficial. Jessica would update me on her work achievements and her social activities, but she rarely asked about my daily life or seemed interested in maintaining a deeper connection. When I mentioned that I had been dealing with some health issues, nothing serious, just the usual aches and pains that come with getting older and working a physically demanding job, Jessica would express appropriate concern but quickly change the subject to her own experiences. "Oh, Mom, you should really consider getting a massage or maybe trying yoga. I've been going to this amazing wellness center here in Atlanta, and it's done wonders for my stress levels. Of course, it's a bit expensive, but it's so worth it for your overall well-being." The suggestion was well-intentioned, but it highlighted the growing gap between our lifestyles and priorities. Jessica's new salary allowed her to spend money on luxury wellness services, while I was still calculating whether I could afford to replace my worn-out work shoes. I began to feel like our relationship had shifted into something that felt more transactional than emotional. Jessica would call when she had exciting news to share or when she needed advice about work situations, but the calls became less frequent and more focused on her immediate needs. The pattern became even more apparent when Jessica announced that she would be spending Thanksgiving with her new coworkers instead of coming home for our traditional celebration. "It's a networking opportunity, Mom. Several people from the management team are hosting a potluck dinner, and I think it would be really good for my career to participate. You understand, right?" I did understand, at least intellectually. Building professional relationships was important, especially in a new city and a new job. But emotionally, the decision stung. We had spent every Thanksgiving together since her father left, and I had been looking forward to hearing about her new life in person. "Of course, honey. That sounds like a great opportunity to get to know your colleagues better. I knew you'd understand. We can do something special when I come home for Christmas. Maybe we can go to that nice restaurant downtown, the one we went to for my college graduation." Christmas came and went with Jessica spending 3 days at home, most of which were filled with her sorting through items she had left in storage and catching up with local friends. The time we spent together was pleasant, but felt oddly impersonal, like I was hosting a friendly acquaintance rather than reconnecting with my daughter. She was full of stories about her new life, her work accomplishments, and the social connection she was building in Atlanta. I listened with genuine interest and pride, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was becoming a peripheral figure in her increasingly sophisticated and independent world. When Jessica's birthday approached in March, I suggested taking a long weekend trip to visit her in Atlanta. I had never seen her new city properly, and I thought it might be nice to spend some quality time together while exploring the places that had become important to her. "Oh, Mom, that weekend is actually really busy for me. We're launching a major campaign that week, and I'll probably be working most of the weekend. Plus, I already have plans with some friends for my actual birthday. Maybe we could plan something for later in the spring when work calms down a bit." The deflection felt familiar, and I realized that Jessica had become quite skilled at managing my expectations without directly saying no to my requests. There was always a reasonable explanation for why my suggestions wouldn't work. Always. A promise to plan something in the future that somehow never materialized. I began to wonder if I had somehow failed as a mother, if my willingness to accommodate Jessica's needs had taught her that my own needs were less important. But every time I considered addressing the issue directly, I talked myself out of it. Jessica was building an important career, and she was still young and figuring out how to balance all the demands of adult life. Maybe this distance was natural, a normal part of the process of children becoming independent adults. Maybe I was being too sensitive, too needy, too expectant of attention and consideration that Jessica simply didn't have the bandwidth to provide. The realization that something fundamental had shifted in our relationship came gradually, like watching the seasons change. There was no single dramatic moment, just an accumulation of small interactions that left me feeling like I was chasing after a connection that Jessica was no longer interested in maintaining. And then came the phone call that would change everything between us forever. The call came on a Friday afternoon in late April while I was updating patient files and looking forward to a quiet weekend at home. Jessica's name appeared on my phone screen, and I answered with the usual mix of excitement and mild anxiety that had become my standard response to her calls. "Mom, I have incredible news. Patricia Williams just offered me a promotion to Regional Marketing Director for the entire Southeast Division. Can you believe it? This is exactly what I've been working toward, and it's happening even faster than I expected. Jessica, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. When does the new position start?" That's the thing. It starts immediately, like Monday immediately. And here's the amazing part. The company is sending me to their leadership retreat in Costa Rica next month. It's this exclusive program for high-potential executives, and I'll be networking with people from offices all over Latin America. I could hear the excitement bubbling in her voice, and despite everything, I felt genuinely happy for her success. "That sounds like an incredible opportunity, sweetheart." It is, but there's one tiny complication. The Costa Rica trip is 3 weeks long, and I need someone to handle some important things while I'm gone. My lease renewal documents need to be signed and submitted. I have a few doctor's appointments that need to be rescheduled, and most importantly, I need someone to take care of Princess. Princess was Jessica's Persian cat, a high-maintenance creature that required daily brushing, special food, and what Jessica described as significant emotional attention. I had met Princess exactly twice, and both encounters had left me with the impression that the cat had inherited her owner's sense of entitlement. "Jessica, that's a long time to be away. Are you sure there isn't someone in Atlanta who could help with these things?" "Mom, you know I haven't really had time to build those kinds of deep friendships yet. My coworkers are great, but asking someone to basically house sit for 3 weeks feels like a huge imposition. Plus, Princess doesn't do well with strangers. She really seemed to like you when you visited." The visit Jessica was referring to had lasted exactly 45 minutes and had consisted mostly of Princess hiding under the bed, while Jessica showed me around her apartment. But I let that detail slide because I could hear the stress creeping into Jessica's voice. "When would you need me to come down to Atlanta?" "Well, ideally you'd arrive the Sunday before I leave so we could go over everything together. Then you'd stay until I get back, which would be a Friday. I know it's a lot to ask, but this promotion comes with a salary increase that's honestly life-changing. I'll be making more in a year than I used to make in 2. 3 weeks away from work meant 3 weeks of unpaid leave, assuming Dr. Henderson would even approve such an extended absence. I had already used up most of my vacation days helping Jessica with her move, and asking for additional time off felt like pushing my luck to dangerous limits. "Let me talk to Dr. Henderson and see what I can arrange. This is such a big opportunity for you, and I want to help if I can." "Thank you so much, Mom. I knew I could count on you. Oh, and one more thing. While you're staying at my apartment, would you mind handling a few other tasks? I've been meaning to organize my closet and maybe do some deep cleaning, especially in the kitchen. I just haven't had time with this new job being so demanding." After we hung up, I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and tried to calculate the financial impact of taking 3 weeks of unpaid leave. Between lost wages and the cost of gas for driving to Atlanta, this favor would cost me approximately $1,200 that I didn't really have to spare. But Jessica was right. This was a life-changing opportunity for her. How could I say no to something that could secure her financial future and advance her career to levels I had never imagined possible? The conversation with Dr. Henderson went about as well as I had expected, which is to say, it didn't go well at all. "Linda, this is the second major leave request you've made in less than 4 months. When you took time off for your daughter's move, I told you that this kind of accommodation couldn't become a regular occurrence. I understand, Dr. Henderson, and I wouldn't ask if it wasn't extremely important. This is a career-defining opportunity for Jessica, and she really needs family support right now. He leaned back in his chair and studied me with an expression that was becoming uncomfortably familiar. Linda, I'm going to be frank with you. Your daughter is 26 years old and apparently quite successful in her career. At what point does she start handling her own responsibilities without requiring you to jeopardize your job? The question hung in the air between us, and I found myself struggling to formulate a response that didn't sound defensive or pathetic. She's not asking me to jeopardize anything. She just needs temporary help during a very important business trip. A 3-week business trip that requires you to take unpaid leave and travel to another state to pet sit and clean her apartment? Linda, does that really sound reasonable to you? When he put it that way, the request did sound somewhat excessive, but explaining the nuances of our relationship felt too complicated and personal for a workplace conversation. If I can arrange for temporary coverage and ensure that all my responsibilities are handled properly, would you consider approving the leave? Dr. Henderson was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him weighing the disruption to his practice against his general appreciation for my work performance. This is the last time, Linda. I mean that absolutely. If I approve this request, I cannot and will not approve any similar accommodations in the future. Your job here depends on reliability and consistency, and I've already made more exceptions for your family situation than I would for any other employee. I assured him that this would be the final request and spent the next week training another temporary replacement and organizing my workload to minimize the impact of my absence. Jessica seemed genuinely grateful when I called to confirm that I could make the trip. Mom, you're literally saving my career right now. I don't know how I'll ever repay you for all this support. You don't need to repay me, honey. I'm just proud to be part of your success story. Well, I definitely want to do something special to show my appreciation. Maybe when I get back from Costa Rica, we can plan a nice trip together. Somewhere you've always wanted to go. The promise felt good to hear, even though I had learned not to put too much weight on Jessica's future planning. Her intentions were always sincere, but her follow-through had become increasingly unreliable as her career demands intensified. The drive to Atlanta gave me time to think about the trajectory of our relationship over the past year. Jessica's success was undeniable, and I was genuinely proud of everything she had accomplished. But I couldn't shake the feeling that each of her advances had somehow created more distance between us rather than bringing us closer together. When I arrived at her apartment on Sunday afternoon, Jessica was in full preparation mode. Her dining room table was covered with documents, travel itineraries, and what appeared to be an extensive packing list. She hugged me briefly before launching into a detailed explanation of everything I would need to handle during her absence. Okay, so Princess gets fed twice a day, but she's very particular about her schedule. Breakfast needs to be at exactly 7 a.m. and dinner at 6 p.m. She gets half a can of the salmon pate in the morning and half a can of the turkey feast at night. The wet food is in the pantry, and whatever you do, don't substitute brands because she'll refuse to eat and then get sick. Jessica handed me a typed list that covered everything from Princess's grooming schedule to the specific way she preferred. Her litter box to be cleaned. The level of detail was impressive and slightly overwhelming. The lease renewal documents are on my kitchen counter, and they need to be submitted by Thursday at the latest. I've highlighted all the sections that need signatures, and the leasing office is open from 9 to 5 on weekdays. They're expecting the paperwork, so you just need to drop it off. We spent the next 3 hours going through every aspect of her apartment maintenance routine. Jessica showed me how to operate her high-end appliances, explained her preferred cleaning products, and walked me through her organizational systems for everything from her mail to her houseplants. I know this seems like a lot, she said as we finished the apartment tour, but I just want to make sure everything is handled properly while I'm gone. This promotion puts me on track for some really significant opportunities, and I can't afford to have any personal issues disrupting my professional momentum. That evening, Jessica treated me to dinner at an expensive restaurant near her apartment. The gesture was thoughtful, but the conversation felt oddly businesslike as she continued to review instructions and expectations for my stay. Oh, and Mom, I almost forgot. While you're here, would you mind organizing my closet? I've been meaning to go through my clothes and donate the things I don't wear anymore, but I just haven't had time. You're so good at that kind of thing, and it would be a huge help. Of course, sweetheart. I'll take care of it. Perfect. And if you have extra time, the guest bathroom could really use a deep clean. The grout is looking a little dingy, and I keep meaning to scrub it properly, but work has been so crazy. I nodded and made mental notes of the additional tasks, trying to calculate how much time each project would require and whether I'd be able to accomplish everything during my stay. Jessica left for the airport early Monday morning, hugging me goodbye and promising to call when she landed in Costa Rica. I waved from her apartment balcony as her taxi pulled away, then turned to survey the space that would be my home for the next 3 weeks. The first few days fell into a comfortable routine. I took care of Princess, handled Jessica's errands, and began working on the closet organization project. Jessica's wardrobe was extensive and expensive, filled with designer pieces that she had accumulated during her career advancement. As I sorted through her clothes, I couldn't help but notice the price tags that were still attached to several items. Dresses that cost more than I made in a week, shoes that could cover my monthly grocery budget, handbags that represented more money than I had in my savings account. The disparity between our lifestyles had never been more apparent than it was. In that moment, surrounded by evidence of Jessica's financial success, while I was taking unpaid leave from my job to provide free domestic services. But I pushed those uncomfortable thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. Jessica was working hard for her success, and if I could contribute to her continued advancement by handling these domestic responsibilities, then that felt like a meaningful way to support her. The daily phone calls from Jessica were brief and focused mainly on her networking activities and the business sessions she was attending. She would ask perfunctory questions about Princess and whether everything was going smoothly with the apartment, but the conversations rarely lasted more than 10 minutes. The retreat is absolutely incredible, Mom. I'm meeting executives from companies all over Central and South America, and the connections I'm making are going to be invaluable for my career development. Patricia Williams told me that participating in this program basically guarantees advancement to the senior director level within the next year. That's wonderful, Jessica. It sounds like the experience is everything you hoped it would be. It's honestly exceeding my expectations. Oh, and I meant to ask, were you able to get the lease documents submitted on time? Yes, I took care of that on Tuesday morning. The leasing office said everything was in order. Perfect. And how's the closet organization coming along? I'm making good progress. You have some beautiful pieces that you never wear. I've set aside several items for donation, but I wanted to check with you before actually taking them anywhere. Just use your best judgment, Mom. I trust you to make good decisions about what I actually need to keep. After she hung up, I continued folding clothes and trying to ignore the growing sense that I was functioning more as Jessica's personal assistant than as her mother. The tasks themselves weren't difficult or unreasonable, but the casual way she assigned them and checked up on my progress felt increasingly impersonal. By the second week, I had settled into a routine that felt almost like living someone else's life. I woke up in Jessica's comfortable bed, made coffee with her expensive espresso machine, spent my days maintaining her apartment and caring for her cat, and fell asleep watching her premium cable channels. It was a pleasant enough existence, but it also felt strangely hollow. I was surrounded by all the markers of Jessica's success, but I felt more disconnected from her than ever. The apartment was beautiful, but it didn't feel like home. Princess was a sweet companion, but she wasn't my cat. The neighborhood was lovely, but I didn't belong there. I found myself thinking about my own life back home, my small apartment, my modest job, my simple routines. For the first time in months, I missed my ordinary existence and wondered what I was really accomplishing by being here. The realization that had been building slowly suddenly crystallized during a phone call on Thursday of the second week. Jessica was describing a networking dinner she had attended the previous evening, enthusiastically detailing the important contacts she had made and the business opportunities that were beginning to develop. "Mom, this trip is literally changing the trajectory of my entire career. I'm so grateful that you made it possible for me to take advantage of this opportunity without worrying about anything back home. I'm glad I could help, sweetheart. You always know exactly what I need, even before I know it myself. That's what makes you such an amazing mother." But as I hung up the phone, I realized that Jessica had never once asked what I needed. In all our conversations about her career advancement, her networking opportunities, her future plans, she had never inquired about my own goals, challenges, or desires. When was the last time she had asked about my job, my health, my social life, my dreams? When had she ever offered to help me with anything, or even expressed curiosity about what kind of help I might want or need? The questions bothered me more than I wanted to admit, and I tried to distract myself by focusing on the remaining tasks on Jessica's list. I deep cleaned her bathroom, organized her kitchen cabinets, and even cleaned her windows to make the apartment sparkle for her return. But the feeling of being taken for granted continued to grow, casting a shadow over what should have been a satisfying experience of contributing to my daughter's success. Jessica's return from Costa Rica was delayed by a day due to flight complications, which meant I would be staying through the weekend instead of leaving on Friday as originally planned. The delay was frustrating because I had already arranged to return to work on Monday morning, and Dr. Henderson had made it clear that punctuality was essential, given the accommodations he had already made. When Jessica finally arrived on Saturday afternoon, she was practically glowing with excitement about her experiences and the professional opportunities that had emerged from the retreat. "Mom, this trip was absolutely life-changing. I made connections with executives from at least 8 different companies, and I already have 3 follow-up meetings scheduled for next month. Patricia Williams told me that my performance during the retreat was exceptional, and she's fast-tracking my promotion to senior director." "That's incredible, Jessica. I'm so proud of how well you represented yourself. Thank you, and thank you so much for making this possible. The apartment looks absolutely amazing. You've outdone yourself with the organization and cleaning." Princess seems relaxed and happy, and knowing that everything here was being handled perfectly allowed me to focus completely on the business opportunities. Jessica walked through her apartment, admiring the work I had done, and expressing genuine appreciation for the effort I had put into maintaining her home. For a moment, it felt like the old dynamic between us, a mother helping her daughter, a daughter appreciating her mother's support. But then Jessica started talking about her next career moves, and I realized that her gratitude, while sincere, was focused entirely on the practical value of my assistance rather than on any deeper recognition of the sacrifice I had made. The timing couldn't be better because Patricia wants to send me to a conference in Barcelona in 6 weeks. It's another networking opportunity with the European leadership team, and it could open up possibilities for international assignments. Barcelona sounds exciting. How long would that trip be? Only 2 weeks this time, but it's during the same period when I need to move to a bigger apartment. The promotion comes with a significant salary increase, and Patricia suggested that I upgrade my living situation to something that better reflects my new position in the company. I felt a familiar sinking sensation as I recognized the direction this conversation was heading. Moving is always stressful, especially when you're traveling for work. Exactly. That's why I was hoping you might be able to help coordinate the move while I'm in Barcelona. I've already started looking at apartments, and I think I've found the perfect place. It's in a luxury building with amazing amenities, and the rent is only about 60% more than what I'm paying now. The casual way she mentioned the rent increase made me realize how completely Jessica's perspective on money had shifted. What she described as only 60% more represented thousands of dollars that I would consider a substantial amount. But to her, it was apparently a reasonable upgrade that reflected her professional advancement. "Jessica, I'm not sure I can take more time off work." Dr. Henderson was very clear that my previous leave requests were already pushing the limits of what he could accommodate. "Oh, Mom, you worry too much about that job. Dr. Henderson knows how valuable you are. He's not going to fire his best employee over a few days of personal leave. Besides, this move is going to set me up for long-term success, and once I'm established in this new position, I'll be able to help you financially. Maybe you could even consider switching to part-time work or finding something less stressful." The suggestion that I was worrying too much about my job felt dismissive and out of touch with the reality of my employment situation. Dr. Henderson had been explicitly clear about the limits of his patients, and I couldn't afford to ignore his warnings. But more than that, I was starting to feel uncomfortable with the assumption that my life should revolve around Jessica's career needs. When had I become someone whose primary value was my availability to handle her logistical challenges? "Let me think about it and see what might be possible," I said, not wanting to have a difficult conversation when she had just returned from her trip. "That's all I ask. I know you'll figure out a way to make it work. You always do." That night, as I lay in Jessica's guest bed for what I thought would be the last time, I found myself replaying the events of the past 3 weeks and trying to understand why I felt so unsettled despite Jessica's obvious gratitude and professional success. I had accomplished everything she had asked me to do, and more. Her apartment was immaculate, her cat was healthy and happy, her administrative tasks had been handled efficiently, and she had been able to focus completely on her career advancement, without any domestic distractions. By any objective measure, my visit had been a complete success. Jessica was thriving professionally, and I had played a meaningful role in supporting her achievements. So why did I feel so empty and unappreciated? The answer came to me slowly as I listened to the sounds of the city outside Jessica's windows. I felt empty because our relationship had become completely one-sided. I was investing my time, energy, and financial resources into Jessica's success, but she wasn't investing anything back into our relationship or my well-being. She expressed gratitude for my help, but she never asked about my own needs or goals. She appreciated my practical support, but she didn't seem interested in maintaining an emotional connection that went beyond the immediate benefits I could provide. I had become a service provider in my daughter's life, someone she could rely on to handle whatever she couldn't or didn't want to handle herself. And the most troubling part was that I had allowed this dynamic to develop by consistently saying yes to her requests without ever asking for anything in return. The next morning, Jessica drove me to the airport for my flight home. She was already planning her apartment search and making lists of everything that would need to be coordinated for her upcoming move. "I'll start looking at places this week, and hopefully make a decision by next weekend. That will give us plenty of time to plan the logistics before my Barcelona trip." I noticed that she said "us" when referring to the moving logistics, as if my participation was already assumed rather than requested. The casual presumption bothered me more than it should have, but I didn't say anything because I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. "Just let me know what you decide about the apartment," I said as she pulled up to the departure curb. "I will. And Mom, thank you again for everything. I honestly don't know what I would do without your support." She hugged me goodbye and drove away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my small suitcase and a growing sense that something fundamental needed to change in our relationship. The flight home gave me time to think about the conversation I would need to have with Dr. Henderson about Jessica's upcoming moving request. I knew what his response would be, and I knew that I couldn't afford to push the boundaries of his patience any further. But more importantly, I was beginning to question whether I should push those boundaries even if I could. Jessica's success was important, but it shouldn't come at the cost of my own job security and financial stability. For the first time in years, I found myself wondering whether saying no to one of Jessica's requests might actually be the most loving thing I could do for both of us. The plane lifted off from Atlanta, carrying me back to my ordinary life and leaving behind the luxury and complications of Jessica's world. As the city grew smaller beneath us, I made a decision that would surprise both of us when the time came to implement it. I was going to stop being available for everything Jessica needed and start being available for some of the things I needed instead. The realization felt both terrifying and liberating, like standing at the edge of a cliff and finally understanding that I had the power to choose whether to jump or step back. But I had no idea that Jessica's next request would be so outrageous, so presumptuous, and so completely disconnected from any reasonable expectation of family support that it would make my decision much easier than I had anticipated. The call came 3 days after I returned from Atlanta, while I was catching up on the work that had accumulated during my absence. Dr. Henderson had been coolly professional about my return, acknowledging that the temporary receptionist had done adequate work, but making it clear that the disruption to his practice had been significant. I was filing insurance claims when my phone buzzed with Jessica's name on the screen. Normally, I would have answered immediately, but something about the timing made me hesitate. I was still processing my experience in Atlanta and the uncomfortable realizations that had emerged during those 3 weeks. Mom, I have the most amazing news. I found the perfect apartment, and you're going to love it. It's in this incredible building called the Metropolitan, and it has everything: a doorman, a fitness center, a rooftop terrace with views of the city skyline. It's exactly the kind of place that says serious professional to clients and colleagues. That sounds lovely, Jessica. I'm glad you found something you like. It gets better. The apartment itself is gorgeous. 2 bedrooms, 2 full bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen with granite countertops, and a living room that's perfect for entertaining. The master bedroom has a walk-in closet that's literally bigger than most people's bedrooms. I waited for her to continue, sensing that there was more to this story than architectural details. The only tiny complication is that I need to move in exactly 3 weeks from today, which is the same weekend I'll be flying to Barcelona for the European Leadership Conference. But I've figured out a solution that actually works out perfectly, for both of us. My stomach tightened as I recognized the familiar pattern of Jessica presenting her needs as if they were mutual benefits. What kind of solution? Well, since you'll be handling the move anyway, I thought you could just stay in the new apartment while I'm in Barcelona. That way, you can get everything organized and settled, and when I come back, we can spend some quality time together in my beautiful new space. It's like a little vacation for you in a luxury apartment building. The presumption took my breath away. Jessica had apparently decided that I would be handling her move without even asking if I was available or willing to take on such a massive responsibility. Jessica, I can't take more time off work. Dr. Henderson was very clear about the limits of what he could accommodate, and I've already pushed those limits with the trips to help you move and the 3 weeks I just spent in Atlanta. Mom, you're being way too cautious about this job situation. Dr. Henderson needs you more than you need him. Good receptionists are hard to find, and he's not going to fire someone with your experience and reliability over a few days of personal leave. Her confidence in my job security felt both naive and dismissive. She had no understanding of the employment dynamics in my workplace or the financial pressures that made my job essential to my survival. It's not just a few days, Jessica. Moving an entire apartment is at least a week-long project, and you're talking about me staying for 2 additional weeks while you're traveling? That's 3 weeks of unpaid leave on top of the 3 weeks I just took. I know it seems like a lot when you break it down like that, but think about the bigger picture. This promotion puts me on track to make serious money. And once I'm established in this new position, I'll be able to help you financially. Maybe you could even retire early and travel. Do some of the things you've always talked about wanting to do. The reference to early retirement felt like a fantasy disconnected from any realistic assessment of my financial situation. Jessica seemed to believe that her success would somehow translate into immediate benefits for me, but she had never actually discussed any concrete plans for providing that support. What exactly are you asking me to do? Just coordinate the move. Pack everything, supervise the movers, handle the logistics with both apartments, and then get everything organized in the new place. The management company at the Metropolitan said they can arrange for cleaning services and basic setup, so it's not like you'd be doing physical labor. You'd basically be project managing. The way she described it made the job sound simple and manageable, but I knew from experience that moving was chaotic, stressful, and physically demanding regardless of how much professional help was available. And you'd be traveling during this entire process? The Barcelona conference is only 2 weeks, but Patricia suggested that I extend the trip to visit our London office for some additional networking opportunities. So it might be closer to 3 weeks total, depending on how the meetings go. 3 weeks of handling Jessica's move and living in her apartment while she networked her way across Europe. The request was so enormous and presumptuous that I found myself temporarily speechless. Jessica, this is a huge responsibility you're asking me to take on. Moving is complicated and stressful under the best circumstances, and you're talking about me handling the entire process while you're on another continent. I know it's a big ask, Mom, but you're so good at this kind of thing. You're organized, you're responsible, and you know my preferences better than anyone. I trust you to make decisions about furniture placement and decorating in a way that I wouldn't trust anyone else. The flattery felt manipulative, like she was trying to reframe an enormous favor as a compliment to my abilities. But beneath the sweet words, I could hear the assumption that my agreement was inevitable. What if something goes wrong with the move? What if the movers damage something, or there are problems with the new apartment, or issues with the lease? That's why I need someone I trust to handle it. A professional moving coordinator would just call me with every little problem, but you would use your judgment and handle things the way I would handle them. The more she explained her reasoning, the more I realized that she was essentially asking me to become her temporary replacement, making decisions about her living situation while she pursued career opportunities on the other side of the world. I need to think about this, Jessica. It's a much bigger commitment than anything you've asked for before. Of course, take your time. But I do need to give the Metropolitan a definitive answer by Friday about the move-in date. So if you could let me know by Thursday, that would be perfect. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the clinic parking lot and tried to process what had just happened. Jessica had presented her request as if it were a reasonable favor between family members, but the scope of what she was asking felt completely unreasonable. She wanted me to take 3 weeks of unpaid leave to handle her entire apartment relocation while she traveled internationally for business. She expected me to make decisions about her furniture, her belongings, and her living space without any direct input from her. And she had framed the whole arrangement as if it were some kind of mutual benefit rather than an enormous imposition on my time and finances. The financial cost alone would be significant. 3 weeks of lost wages plus gas money for multiple trips to Atlanta, plus the general expenses of living away from home for an extended period. I calculated that the total cost would be close to $2,000, money that I couldn't afford to lose from my already tight budget. But beyond the financial considerations, there was something fundamentally troubling about the dynamic Jessica was proposing. She was treating me like a personal assistant or property manager rather than like her mother. Our relationship was becoming increasingly transactional, with her success requiring ever greater sacrifices from me. That evening, I called my sister Margaret, who lived in North Carolina and had maintained a more arm's-length relationship with her own adult children. Linda, are you seriously considering this? Because from where I'm sitting, this sounds absolutely insane. She's my daughter, Margaret. This promotion is really important for her career, and she needs family support during this transition. She needs family support or she needs free labor, because there's a difference between supporting someone's career and becoming their unpaid employee. Margaret's bluntness was uncomfortable but not entirely wrong. I just want to help her succeed. Linda, honey, your daughter is making more money than both of us combined, and she's asking you to sacrifice your job security and financial stability to handle her personal logistics. Does that sound like a reasonable request to you? It's not that simple. She's dealing with a lot of pressure at work, and coordinating a move while traveling internationally would be extremely stressful. So she should hire professionals to handle it. She can afford professional movers, professional organizers, professional coordinators. Why is she asking her 53-year-old mother to take unpaid leave and do work that she could easily pay someone else to do? The question hung in the air between us, and I found myself struggling to formulate an answer that didn't sound pathetic or naive. Because she trusts me to handle it properly? Linda, listen to yourself. You're making excuses for behavior that you would never tolerate from anyone else. If a friend told you that her adult daughter was making these kinds of demands, what would you tell her? I would tell her that her daughter was taking advantage of her. The realization hit me with uncomfortable clarity, but I wasn't ready to fully acknowledge it yet. I just need to think about it more. Promise me you'll really think about it. Not just about how to make Jessica's life easier, but about what this pattern is doing to your own life and your own future. After we hung up, I made myself a simple dinner and tried to imagine explaining Jessica's request to Dr. Henderson. The conversation would be humiliating because I knew exactly what his response would be, and I knew that he would question my judgment and priorities in a way that would be difficult to defend. But more than that, I was beginning to question my own judgment and priorities. When had Jessica's needs become so much more important than my own that I was willing to risk my job and my financial security to accommodate them? The next morning at work, I found myself watching Dr. Henderson's interactions with patients and staff with new awareness. He was professional, competent, and generally fair, but he also ran his practice with clear expectations and boundaries. When staff members needed personal time, he was reasonable about approving requests that were given adequate notice and didn't disrupt the office operations. What he wouldn't tolerate was last-minute demands for extended leave that forced him to scramble for coverage and apologize to patients for scheduling disruptions. Jessica's moving timeline would require exactly that kind of disruptive accommodation. During my lunch break, I called Jessica to discuss the practical realities of her request. I've been thinking about the logistics of what you're asking, and I'm not sure it's feasible given my work situation. Mom, what exactly are you worried about? Is it the time commitment, or are you concerned about something specific? It's everything, Jessica. 3 weeks of unpaid leave, the complexity of coordinating a move from a distance, the responsibility of making decisions about your belongings and your living space. It's a lot more complicated than you're making it sound. I understand that it's a big responsibility, but it's also a big opportunity for me. This promotion could set up my entire future, and I need to know that my personal life is being handled by someone I trust completely. What about hiring professional services to handle the move? You mentioned that your salary increase is substantial, so couldn't you afford to pay for the kind of help you need? There was a pause before Jessica responded, and when she did, her tone had shifted slightly. Of course I could hire professionals, but it's not the same thing. Professional coordinators don't know me. They don't understand my preferences, and they don't care about my belongings the way family does. Plus, I was looking forward to having you stay in the new apartment and get it set up the way you think. It should be arranged. The appeal to family loyalty felt manipulative, especially when combined with the suggestion that I would somehow enjoy the experience of organizing her living space while she traveled internationally for business. Jessica, I need to be honest with you about something. Dr. Henderson has already told me that he can't accommodate any more extended leave requests. If I take 3 more weeks off, I could lose my job. Mom, You're catastrophizing. Dr. Henderson is not going to fire you over this. You're a good employee, and he knows how hard you are to replace. Her dismissive confidence about my employment situation was frustrating because it revealed how little she understood about the realities of my workplace and financial circumstances. Even if I don't lose my job, 3 weeks of unpaid leave represents a significant financial hardship for me. I'm not in a position to absorb that kind of income loss right now. I understand that money is tight for you, and I feel terrible about asking you to make this sacrifice. But think about it as an investment in both our futures. Once I'm established in this new position, I'll be able to help you financially in ways that could make a real difference in your life. The promise of future financial help felt vague and conditional, especially since Jessica had never followed through on similar promises in the past. What kind of help are you talking about specifically? Well, I've been thinking that once my income stabilizes at this new level, I could start contributing to your retirement savings. Maybe even help you pay off your mortgage early so you could have more financial flexibility. The suggestions sounded generous, but they were also entirely hypothetical. Jessica was asking me to make immediate financial sacrifices based on the possibility that she might provide future financial assistance that she had never committed to in concrete terms. Jessica, I appreciate that you want to help me eventually, but I need to make decisions based on my current financial reality, not on future possibilities. I get that, Mom, but sometimes you have to take calculated risks to create better opportunities. If I don't take advantage of this promotion and the networking opportunities that come with it, I might not get another chance like this for years. The conversation was starting to feel circular, with Jessica presenting her career advancement as if it required my participation and sacrifice. But her success was her responsibility, not mine. And she had the financial resources to handle her own logistical challenges without depending on my unpaid labor. I need more time to think about this. Can you give me until Sunday to make a final decision? Of course, but remember that I need to confirm everything with the Metropolitan by Monday morning. If you can't help with the move, I'll need to start making alternative arrangements right away. The subtle pressure in her response felt familiar and uncomfortable. Jessica had become skilled at creating artificial urgency around her requests, making it seem like my hesitation was somehow causing problems for her, rather than acknowledging that her timeline was the source of the pressure. That weekend, I did something I hadn't done in years. I made a list of my own goals and priorities, separate from Jessica's needs and expectations. The exercise was more difficult than I had anticipated because I had spent so much time focused on supporting her that I had lost track of what I wanted for my own life. I wanted job security and financial stability. I wanted to build my retirement savings so that I could eventually stop working without being a burden to anyone. I wanted to travel, but on my own terms and to places that interested me. I wanted to develop friendships and hobbies that weren't connected to Jessica's schedule or approval. Looking at that list, I realized that none of my goals would be advanced by taking 3 weeks of unpaid leave to handle Jessica's apartment move. In fact, agreeing to her request would set back almost every goal I had identified for myself. The realization was simultaneously liberating and terrifying. For the first time in years, I was considering the possibility of saying no to one of Jessica's requests, not because I couldn't find a way to accommodate her, but because accommodating her would come at too high a cost to my own well-being. Sunday evening, I called Jessica with my decision. I've thought carefully about your request, and I'm not going to be able to help with the move. There was a long silence before she responded. What do you mean you can't help? Is this about the time off work? Because I really think you're overestimating how difficult that conversation will be. It's about more than just the time off, Jessica. It's about the financial cost, the complexity of the responsibility you're asking me to take on, and the impact on my own life and goals. Mom, I'm really surprised by this. You've always been so supportive of my career, and this is probably the most important opportunity I've ever had. I don't understand why you're choosing now to start saying no to things." The phrase, "choosing now to start saying no," revealed how completely Jessica had taken my availability for granted. She seemed genuinely shocked by the possibility that I might have limitations or priorities that didn't align with her needs. "I'm not saying no to be difficult, Jessica. I'm saying no because what you're asking is more than I can reasonably manage without significant consequences for my own life. But this is my future we're talking about. This promotion could set me up for opportunities that would benefit both of us in the long run. Your future is important, but it's your responsibility to manage it in a way that doesn't require other people to sacrifice their financial security and job stability. I can't believe you're being so selfish about this. When did you become the kind of person who puts her own convenience ahead of her daughter's success?" The accusation of selfishness stung, but it also clarified something important about our relationship dynamic. In Jessica's worldview, my availability for her needs was expected, and my unavailability was selfish. There was no recognition that I might have legitimate competing priorities, or that her requests might be unreasonable. "Jessica, I'm not being selfish. I'm being realistic about what I can and can't do. You have the financial resources to hire professional help for this move, and that's probably a better solution anyway. It's not about the money, Mom. It's about having family support during one of the most important periods of my life. I thought I could count on you to be there for me when it really mattered." The emotional manipulation was becoming more obvious as the conversation continued. Jessica was framing my refusal as a betrayal of family loyalty rather than acknowledging that her request was excessive and unreasonable. "I am here for you, Jessica. But being here for you doesn't mean saying yes to every request, regardless of the cost to myself. Fine. I guess I'll figure out how to handle this on my own, since apparently I can't rely on family when I need help the most." You can rely on family for reasonable help. What you're asking for isn't reasonable, and I think you know that. I don't know that at all. I think you're making excuses because you don't want to put yourself out for my benefit. The conversation was deteriorating rapidly, and I could hear Jessica's frustration and disappointment building toward anger. But I also felt something I hadn't experienced in our relationship for a long time: clarity about my own boundaries and the confidence to maintain them. "Jessica, I love you, and I want you to succeed, but I'm not going to sacrifice my job security and financial stability to handle your moving logistics. You're a capable, successful adult, and you can figure out how to manage this situation without my participation." Unbelievable. I finally ask you for something really important, and this is how you respond. "I'm not going to forget this, Mom." The threat was implicit but clear. My refusal to accommodate this request would damage our relationship in ways that might be permanent. Jessica was essentially giving me an ultimatum: sacrifice my own well-being for her convenience, or face the consequences of her displeasure. For a moment, I felt the familiar pull to backtrack, to find some way to compromise, to minimize the conflict by agreeing to help despite my reservations. The pattern was so ingrained that saying no felt almost physically difficult. But then, I thought about Margaret's words, about the pattern of escalating demands, about the list of goals I had written for my own life. Jessica's anger and disappointment were unpleasant, but they were not my responsibility to manage. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Jessica, but my decision is final. I hope you're able to find good professional help for the move, and I hope your trip to Barcelona is successful. Don't bother calling me for a while, Mom. I need time to process the fact that my own mother abandoned me during one of the most stressful periods of my life." The line went dead, leaving me sitting in my quiet apartment with a mix of emotions I couldn't immediately untangle. Relief that I had finally set a boundary. Guilt about disappointing Jessica during what was genuinely an important time in her career. Anxiety about the potential long-term damage to our relationship. But underneath all those conflicted feelings was something I hadn't experienced in years: pride in myself for choosing my own well-being over someone else's convenience, even when that someone was my daughter. The next morning, I went to work with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. There was no need to have an awkward conversation with Dr. Henderson about extended leave. No need to worry about finding coverage for my responsibilities. No need to calculate the financial impact of unpaid time off. For the first time in a long time, I was simply going to work, doing my job, and living my own life without the weight of someone else's logistical challenges hanging over my head. Jessica didn't call for 2 weeks, and when she finally did, her tone was cold and formal. "I wanted to let you know that I handled the move successfully without any help from family. I hired a full-service moving company that coordinated everything, and the process was actually much smoother than I expected. I'm glad it worked out well for you." It did, though it would have been nice to have family support during such a stressful time. Anyway, I'm calling because I have some news that I thought you should hear directly from me. I waited for her to continue, sensing that whatever she was about to say would be significant. I've been thinking a lot about family dynamics and expectations, and I've decided that it's probably better for both of us if we maintain more independence in our relationship going forward. What does that mean exactly? It means I'm not going to be calling as often or expecting the same level of involvement in each other's lives. I think we both need space to focus on our own priorities and goals. The message was clear. Jessica was punishing me for refusing her request by withdrawing from our relationship. She was essentially firing me as her mother because I had declined to serve as her unpaid personal assistant. If that's what you think is best for you, I understand. I do think it's best. I need to be able to count on the people in my life. And our recent interactions have shown me that I can't count on you in the ways that matter most to me. The irony was painful. Jessica couldn't count on me to sacrifice my job security for her convenience, but I had never been able to count on her for emotional support, genuine interest in my life, or reciprocal care and consideration. I hope you'll reconsider eventually, Jessica, but I respect your decision. Maybe someday, but not anytime soon. I have a lot of personal and professional growth to focus on, and I need to surround myself with people who support my goals unconditionally. After she hung up, I sat in my kitchen and tried to process what had just happened. Jessica had essentially ended our relationship because I had refused to be available for unlimited sacrifice on her behalf. She had revealed that her definition of family love was my willingness to put her needs ahead of my own well-being without question or limit. The revelation was painful, but it was also clarifying. I had spent years trying to earn Jessica's love and appreciation through increasingly costly demonstrations of availability and sacrifice. But her withdrawal in response to my first significant boundary told me everything I needed to know about the true nature of our relationship. Jessica had never loved me as a person. She had loved what I provided for her, and when I stopped providing it unconditionally, she stopped seeing value in maintaining our connection. The realization hurt, but it also freed me from the exhausting work of trying to be enough for someone who would never be satisfied with anything less than complete self-sacrifice. For the first time in years, I began planning for my own future without considering how my choices might affect Jessica's convenience or approval. The experience was both terrifying and exhilarating, like learning to walk again after a long illness. I had no idea that Jessica's next move would be so calculated, so manipulative, and so completely revealing of her true character, that it would make my decision to maintain boundaries feel not just justified, but absolutely essential for my own survival. 6 months passed in blessed silence. No emergency calls, no last-minute requests, no guilt trips disguised as family obligations. I settled into a routine that was entirely my own for the first time in decades. I took a pottery class, started hiking on weekends, and even went on a few dates with a kind man named Robert who worked at the library. Then Jessica called. "Mom, I need to see you." There's something important we need to discuss face to face. Her voice carried a strange mixture of urgency and hesitation that I didn't recognize. After months of radio silence, the sudden contact felt ominous. "What's this about, Jessica? I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. I'm flying home this weekend, and I was hoping you could pick me up from the airport Sunday at 3 p.m. My flight gets in at 2:45. The casual assumption that I would be available to provide airport transportation after she had essentially disowned me was breathtaking in its audacity. "Jessica, you ended our relationship 6 months ago. You can take a taxi or rideshare." "Mom, please. This is really important, and I need to talk to you privately. The drive from the airport would give us time to have a real conversation." Something in her tone made me curious despite myself. Jessica never pleaded, never showed vulnerability, never admitted to needing anything she couldn't purchase or command. What's so important that it requires a face-to-face conversation? I can't explain everything over the phone, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about our relationship and some things I need to make right. Please, just this once. Against my better judgment, I agreed to pick her up. The drive to the airport gave me time to prepare myself emotionally for whatever Jessica had planned. I suspected this was another manipulation, another attempt to guilt me into resuming my role as her unpaid personal assistant. I waited in the cell phone lot until her text arrived, then drove to the pickup area. Jessica emerged from the terminal, looking uncharacteristically subdued. Gone was the confident stride and designer outfit. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, and her usually perfect hair looked tired. "Thank you for coming," she said as she got into my car. "I wasn't sure you would. You said it was important." "It is." She was quiet for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to tell you something that's going to be hard to hear. I'm in serious financial trouble." The admission was so unexpected that I almost missed the airport exit. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind where I might lose my job, my apartment, and basically everything I've worked for." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I made some really bad investment decisions, and then I tried to fix them with even worse decisions. I owe money to people who don't accept payment plans." I pulled into a gas station parking lot and turned to face her. "How much money?" $60,000, and they want it by the end of the month, or they're going to contact my employer and destroy my career. The number was staggering. "Jessica, how did this happen?" "Cryptocurrency, mostly. And some day trading that went catastrophically wrong. I thought I could get rich quick and set us both up for life, but I just kept losing more and more. I've already liquidated everything I can, my savings, my retirement account, even my jewelry." For a moment, I felt the familiar tug of maternal instinct, the urge to find a way to rescue her from this crisis. Then I remembered the pottery class I had missed to drive to the airport, the hiking trip I had postponed, the new life I had been building while she was learning that actions have consequences. "What do you want from me, Jessica?" "I know you have the house. I know it's paid off and worth probably $200,000. If you could take out a home equity loan or sell it, you could save my entire future." The breathtaking entitlement of the request left me momentarily speechless. She wanted me to risk my only asset, my security, my home, to bail her out of a gambling problem she had created through pure greed. "Jessica, that house is my retirement plan. It's the only financial security I have." "But you're only 53. You have years to rebuild. I'm 26. If my career gets destroyed now, I'll never recover. You could move into a small apartment and live off Social Security when you retire. I can't start over from nothing." "You're not starting from nothing. You have a college education, work experience, and you're young enough to rebuild whatever you've lost." "Mom, please. I'm begging you. I've never asked you for anything this big before." The lie was so blatant that I almost laughed. "Jessica, you've asked me for countless things. The only difference is that this time you're asking for something I can't easily replace. This is different, and you know it. This is about my survival. No, this is about you learning that your choices have consequences. I'm not going to sacrifice my home to fix a problem you created through reckless gambling." Her demeanor shifted instantly from pleading to angry. "I should have known you'd be selfish about this. You've always been jealous of my success, and now you're happy to watch me fail. I'm not happy about your situation, but I'm not responsible for fixing it either. Fine, don't help me. But don't expect me to take care of you when you're old and broke. Don't expect me to visit you in whatever nursing home you end up in when you can't afford anything better." The threat revealed everything I needed to know about Jessica's true character. She saw our relationship as purely transactional. She would provide future care in exchange for current financial support, and without that transaction, I had no value to her. "Jessica, get out of my car." "What?" "Get out. Call someone else for a ride or take a taxi. This conversation is over." "You can't just abandon me at a gas station. Watch me." She stared at me for a long moment, perhaps seeing something in my expression that she hadn't seen before. Then she grabbed her bag and got out, slamming the door behind her. I drove home in complete peace. When I got there, I poured myself a glass of wine and called Robert to see if he wanted to have dinner. Then I called my lawyer and made an appointment to update my will, removing Jessica as my beneficiary and leaving everything to the animal shelter where I had started volunteering. Jessica could learn to solve her own problems. I was done being her solution. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.